And that takes us to the new column, launched today.
Right.
Down goes Brown. You're always known as the guy that is not the contrarian, so this is really weird for you to. This is off-brand for you to be going down this path of going against the grain. Where'd you come up with this idea? Because it's a super fun idea. I think the readers seem to like it. I loved it. Where'd you come up with this idea?
I don't remember exactly where it popped in my head, but it was probably. I mean, you guys are the radio guys, so you know the drill, right? Where if you want to make it anywhere, and certainly if I ever want to get on TV, especially down in the States, I got to know how to argue things that I don't actually believe, but they're controversial, right? So I've kind of figured this would be a great chance for me to kind of exercise those contrarian muscles. And so I put a call out to the readers and I said, give me a statement that you believe to be true about the NHL, about hockey, that you not only think is true, but that you think is uncontroversial and maybe even inarguable. And I will argue it. I will, I'll work out my contrarian, muscles and try to put an argument out there in the world that makes sense against whatever obvious thing that you've given me. And needless to say, my readers responded, I would say most of them, the majority, by just trying to wage psychological warfare on me and pick things that they knew I would absolutely hate to argue against, or that, I couldn't possibly form a coherent argument. And I picked a few of them and I took my best swing, and we'll see. I'm guessing some maybe more convincing than others, but I did my best.
I have to say, when I read that article and the first thing I see is Mark Messier wearing the Vancouver Canucks jersey and you having to argue about why it was a good thing that he was in Vancouver and he ultimately brought them all those great players. Like I love joking about the fact that Mark Messier was not ideal for the Vancouver Canucks. There was a good 5 minutes I sat with myself and I thought, how did DGB do this? Like, he convinced me that he was brilliant. The Canucks should be thanking him.
Two things here. First of all, no word of a lie. I put the call out to the readers over the weekend. That was the very first one that I got. The very first thing that pops into my mailbox is make the case that Mark Messier was actually good for the Vancouver Canucks. And I really considered just going like, you know what? There's still time. I can delete the tweet. I can just, bad idea, walk away from it right now. And I got to be honest, though, as I was making the argument, I got about halfway through it and I started going like, I'm making some sense here. Like, this is actually, there are a few in there, I won't give it away, but I think I've already had somebody tell me today that there are a couple in there where you can tell my heart's not really in it. You can tell that I maybe, it's not too hard to peek behind the curtain and realize Sean doesn't really seem to mean what he's saying here. But when it came to this one, started off having some fun with it. And like, I got about halfway in and I started like working through the trade trees and that kind of thing. And I was like, I think I'm making a good point here. I think actually, I might be onto something. And then, Canuck fans have read it and I'm assuming they think I'm onto something too. Cause there's like a few hundred of them outside of my house right now. And they're all inviting me to come outside and hang out with them. So,
step outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. We wanted to.
Do you have any of those torches out there, to keep?
Yeah,
warm?
they do. I don't know why. We haven't had any power failures
weird.
or anything, but it's probably, maybe we're doing a barbecue. It'd be my guess.
Yeah. I wonder, like how tough would it be if somebody submits to you something like, Gary Bettman, his tenure as commissioner was, it's. I know where you come down on this. How tough would it be for you to have to argue, I guess, that Bettman's tenure was like overwhelmingly positive? Like if somebody writes in and says, hey, Gary Bettman, terrible commissioner. Now you have to do the opposite.
Yeah. And that one would be especially tough because I've written the exact opposite. So, that was one of those a couple years ago when it was his 30th year anniversary. This was earlier this year, actually.
Yeah. February this year.
There were a lot of people out there who were writing maybe Gary Bettman gets a bad rap. Maybe we should give him more credit. And I was like, no, I'm going to write the piece that puts that to bed and says like, hey, everybody, let's pump the brakes a little bit on that. Could I flip it around and argue the exact opposite, like a total hypocrite? Yeah, absolutely. I'm a sports writer. Of course I could do that. people would, I'm sure, find the old piece and be like, hey, wait a second. But I guess my argument, if I had to make a pro Bettman argument, the sleight of hand that you have to do is you have to compare Gary Bettman to what came before. So you're comparing him to Gil Stein and John Ziegler primarily. By those comparisons, comes across pretty well. I mean, the NHL back in those days was, I mean, it was, you think it's a poorly run league now. The stuff that went on back then, and especially if you're younger or you're a newer fan, so I tell you, somebody should write a book about this stuff because it's wild, the kind of stories that went on. So I think you could make a good case that, hey, compared to those guys, Gary Bettman's done a fantastic job. And then you just kind of leave it at there. And you hope that nobody asks the question that I asked in my piece earlier this year, which is, okay, but what about compared to what could have been and what every other league has been doing for the last 30 years and all of the missed opportunities? I would just skip by that part, skip by the weak part of the argument. And I just say, hey, he was better than Gil Stein. So what do you want?
Could I put you on the spot and suggest another topic you could be?
Why not? You've already had me renounce my children. Why? How much tougher can this be?
Okay, so I saw the prompt to send an email in, so I sent it in as an email. So you can write it in for another column if you want.
Okay, great.
But I would love for you to argue against the age limit for the Calder Trophy. It's a great idea, I think, to have it at the age of 26. You don't have any of these random. Yeah. Anyway, you argue it. Like I think that's a good idea. What say you, Contrarian?
Yeah. So you're looking at you want me to like to be on the side of like the Sergei Makarov, like the 30-year-old who comes in and gets the rookie of the year. Hey, I might just say, look, it's about being a rookie. If you're one of the, I mean, Julian. And here I go. Yes. You can see, you can feel the engine starting to rev up in the Contrarian.
I see it. I see the light bulb went off.
Better story in sports than when some kid who gets drafted late or maybe doesn't even get drafted at all and has to sweat and bleed and claw their way up the ranks from the low minors to even get a shot at the minor leagues, maybe in the AHL. They're in the AHL for years and years and years, and then they finally get to make their NHL debut. I mean, it happens every few years where you'll see somebody, they're 30 and they're making their NHL debut. They're 33 and they're finally there and the family's all there. You're telling me if that guy puts together a miracle season, scores 76 goals and ties Teemu Selanne and all of that, you're going to deprive them of their Calder Trophy that they have earned as the best. After all that work, you're going to deprive them based on an age limit? I mean, that's ageist, Julian. I mean, that's. I mean, this is just. I thought you were better than this, to be honest with you. That you would deny somebody that has worked so hard just because of a number. I mean, it's disappointing to me.
So, really. So if Matt Tompkins, who just made his NHL debut for the Tampa Bay Lightning over the weekend, 29 years old, spent 4 years at Ohio State, bounced around the ECHL, the AHL, played in Sweden for 2 years, and then gets to make the debut for the Lightning. So you're telling me if he finds a way at the age of 29 to have a stellar season, he should get the Calder Trophy at 29 years old?
You want, Connor Bedard, who has been a superstar since he was 6 years old, who's never played against anybody who was better than him in his entire life. You're going to give him that award over somebody who had to fight and claw at the age of 29 to get up there? I mean, I don't know, man. I really don't know what to tell you. I think absolutely we should be giving these awards to these hardworking youngish men who are winning them. And I mean, maybe the next Tim Thomas comes around at 36 or whatever he was, breaks into the league finally, and you're all set. And maybe it's Matvei Michkov comes over 10 years from now when he's 32 and is already the best player in the world. I mean, that could happen too, but I like my version a little better. Again, key to being a contrarian, you got to hit the points that help you, and you just got to skip over the ones that maybe don't.
Okay, Flyers fans are now freaking out about that scenario, by the way, just so you know.
I said he was the best player in the world. I mean, the rebuild will still be going on, guys. It's going to be fine.
It's going to be okay.